economy and from Crisis and Beyond Town Hall. Please feel free if you have any questions, ask questions in the Q&A or in the chat. I have with me City Councilor Teddy Waszazak, who will give you a wave right now, and Economist Amanda Janoo, and who will also give you a wave right now. And we are going to do our town hall a little differently than we've done some others in the past. We are going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to give Amanda the floor. Amanda is feeling under the weather right now, and so she's going to jump off probably after about an hour. And we want to make sure that you have plenty of time to ask her questions and to learn from her about what would build the strongest economy anyways and following a crisis, and where we were lacking in the beginning of this event, as well this crisis event, as well as where we can go from here, so that we are better prepared next time to have a better outcome. So I'm going to give us each a minute to introduce ourselves, and I'm going to start by introducing my mom, who is the interpreter today, Judy Kanoy, and she has been volunteering her services to us, and we are really grateful. If you need an interpreter and you're seeing her on the screen, make sure that you you can type in how do I pin the interpreter, and Carrie, who's from Progressive Insider and is producing this, will help you do that. I'm going to start by introducing City Councilor Teddy Waszazak. Teddy has additionally to being a city councilor, he has also been a movement leader, especially surrounding economic issues and building a bottom-up economy. And so I'm going to give him the floor to just tell you a little bit, to just introduce himself, and then in a few minutes we'll go back and tell a little bit about what our role has been in the economy.
Sure, thank you, Brenda, and thank you for inviting me on again today. Always happy to chat with you, as you know. So yeah, my name is Teddy Waszazak. I am the City Councilor for Ward 2 in the city of Barrie, Vermont. And as Brenda talked about, I am also a movement leader. I am on the board of directors with Rights and Democracy here in Vermont. And I really got my start being involved on economic justice issues. I believe very strongly that that the American economy, the Vermont economy, is built on a structure that is unequal. And in order for any of us to truly achieve economic independence, and for any of us to, for lack of a better term, live our best lives, we are going to have to go through and restructure those systems and completely rebuild them. And one of the things that I have seen coming through this COVID crisis as we work through it is people are starting to understand that going back to normal isn't going to work because normal wasn't working. And so I think that if there is a bright spot to be seen right now, it's that I think a lot of folks are understanding that we do need some very large structural change in the way our economy is, both in Vermont and national. And so that is always how I see economic injustices as one end of the seesaw, and social, racial, and gender justice as the other end of that seesaw. And we always need to be working to make sure that those different paths are being observed when we are putting in place systems and mechanisms to right inequalities. We need to be sure we're not making other inequalities worse, or just not addressing them in the first place. And so, yeah, that's my brief introduction.
Great. Now I'd like to introduce economist Amanda Janoo. And I met Amanda maybe just during or just after my race for governor, and we did start working on a system for building a bottom-up economy in Vermont. We didn't get very far because both of us are incredibly busy with other work that we're doing, but it's still there. We have the beginning outline, and I hope that we'll get back to it very soon. But her understanding of what creates a stable and strong economy is outstanding, and that is why I'm grateful to have you with us today, Amanda.
Excellent. Thank you so much for inviting me as well, Brenda. Yes, my name is Amanda Janoo. I'm originally from South Stratford, Vermont. But I've been living and working internationally for about a decade now, for the UN and in international development, supporting governments and institutions and communities to build more just and sustainable economies. So I work in the area as an economic policy expert, trying to encourage innovative thinking, community-based thinking, strength-based initiatives that are really around, as Brenda says, a bottom-up approach to economic development and progress. And I'm most recently joined an organization called the Wellbeing Economy Alliance as their knowledge and policy lead. So I came to Scotland to work here, meet my colleagues for a month or two, and obviously have gotten stuck in lockdown. So greetings from Glasgow, Scotland, and I'm really happy to be here and to speak with all of you.
Sorry. I am multitasking as a homeschool parent right now, so I'm very sorry if I take a minute. I wanted to start a little by just talking about our experience, what we've done exactly, and just a brief summary of where people think we need to go from here. And I think that it's really important to discuss, and I'll get to that in a minute, our experience, because each of us has a unique way that we've been working on economic justice and a unique way that we've been working on economic impact and driving local economy or building structures of economy. And so understanding that background as we move forward is really excellent. Before we go any further, if you're watching on Progressive Insider's Facebook or YouTube or our Facebook or Instagram. If you ask questions in the Facebook live chats, we will get them from people who are monitoring them. But the best way is to come into the event and be able to write your questions right in the Q&A or chat, and we'll make sure to add links to register and come into the event at this point if you do decide that that's how you'd like to come in and watch. Otherwise, watching from Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube is an excellent way to view this event. So I'm going to start with Teddy and let you take a minute to just let us know what you've been doing and where you think we need to go from here.
Sure. I think like most of us, it has been a very COVID world. And so we have seen a lot of, just like across the state and I'm sure across the country, maybe even in Glasgow, a lot of mutual aid groups coming together to support the vulnerable people in our community. As well as something I've been working on is I've been making phone calls, sending emails, and calling the governor's office, trying to get either Governor Scott or the legislature to take some action regarding rent and mortgage payments that will be due. We've missed the April deadline, but that will be due May 1. Because while the federal government has passed the stimulus package, we know a lot of, if you're not a citizen, that complicates things. If you weren't able to file your tax returns, that complicates things and delays the money you're getting in. So what I've been focused on right now is trying to get either the legislature or the governor to act in some way to protect people from losing their homes or being threatened with eviction under a pandemic. Because another thing that we have seen is that there are people who, for whom they can go 2 to 3 weeks without getting a paycheck and be able to wait for that stimulus package or wait to get it approved for unemployment. But I mean, you're seeing stories of people who applied for unemployment during the early stages of the pandemic in mid-March who still have not been approved because our state government is not equipped to handle the amount of incoming applications that they've gotten. So I think that it's extremely important for the governor and the state government because our towns and cities are, I talked about this last time, we're a Dillon's Rule state, which basically means our municipalities have to ask permission of the state government to do things that aren't specifically within our charter, such as stopping evictions or a moratorium on rent and mortgage payments in the city. That's just not something that's within our power to legally protect people from, and we don't want to do it if we don't have the legal authority to back it up. Because if we pass a resolution that says, fine, no more mortgage payments or rent payments in the city, and a bank comes to us and says, what is your legal authority to do that? We have no protection for that person who is either a renter or a homeowner that's struggling to make their mortgage. And I mean, frankly, same thing on small businesses. Vermont is very dependent on our downtown small businesses, and a lot of them, paycheck to paycheck isn't quite appropriate, but month to month. And how are those their rent payments and their mortgages on their spaces going to be paid? So I think that while I am glad that the federal government is both boosting unemployment benefits and has passed the stimulus package, those are definitely short-term solutions to this long-term, huge structural problem. And I think we're also seeing for the first time, I think at this scale in my lifetime anyway, how closely related public health and economics are. I think that's a message that's starting to really, I mean, I think we understand that, and a lot of people who do this work, of course, understand how closely, you know, poverty and health are connected. But I think that this epidemic is sort of forcing that idea into the front lines that, you know, how much private health insurance, this is a perfect example for it. Everyone loves to defend wonderful health insurance plans that have been gotten through years of, you know, working with unions, so on and so on. But that's all tied to your employer. Once you're furloughed and once you're laid off and once your employer is no longer your employer and you don't have health insurance and now you're in the middle of a pandemic, seems like a time that universal health care sponsored by the government would be the thing to have. So my focus right now is Governor Scott has extended our order until May 15th at the moment. So trying to find some relief for homeowners, renters, and small businesses when it comes to their mortgage and rent payments on May 1st is going to be something that I think is very important moving forward.
Thanks, Teddy. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, and then Amanda will come on as well, and she will really take the floor for a good portion of it. And we might ask her some questions, and certainly we'll ask the participants to ask her some questions as well. So, yeah, I started the Southern Vermont Dance Festival following Tropical Storm Irene, which created great economic crisis across our state and many states, and certainly in my hometown of Brattleboro, Vermont. I actually lived in Williamsville at the time. My son and I lost all of our belongings. The festival was built as a long-term economic driver that we utilized my background in the arts to connect the arts to agriculture and recreation, and then connect that to businesses and our town government, and figure out a way to make sure that we're driving people from outside of Vermont or even in our own communities into our downtowns, into our outside of downtowns, and making sure that people are staying in hotels, eating in restaurants, shopping in our stores. And we used a lot of tools to make sure that happened, and have had a successful 7 years. This would be our 8th year. We are going to have to, the whole structure of the festival is around bringing people from outside of town. And so obviously this year it is not sustainable to do the festival, but we'll be back in the 9th year and are great to have that structure already in place to help drive the local economy. I will say this, it's quite sad to have that has been my life's work for the last 7 years, and driving through town in a completely dark storefronts is a hard thing to see. And so my heart is with business owners and communities who are worried that their rural communities are going to really suffer after this. Not only do I understand that, but I've seen it before, and I've done the economic work to make sure that that we can carry forward a stronger economy. What I have seen is that our economic structure in the first place is built on a system that is completely on the backs of people who are just below, just at, or just above the margin. And so in a crisis like this, what we see is that the economy cannot withstand this situation because it's entirely reliant upon the extraordinary, essential, and constant 2, 3, 4 jobs of people who can't make ends meet. And so when people like that, people like myself, people like Teddy are forced to stay home, that means that our economy is suffering. Not only that, but we are the people who are in that economic situation are the people putting money back into the economy. And so we can't right now. And not only that, but the likelihood that we will be able to for quite some time is low. And so the best way for us to rebuild, and the work that we've been doing, lots of progressives across the state and across the country have kind of been screaming from the rooftops, but the work that we've been doing is to build a structure that is different than that. One that truly builds the economy from the bottom up, so that when we have a crisis like this, we have a much more stable and strong center, so that the foundation does not crumble beneath us, which is what we just saw. And in my work in the dance festival, it has been quite something. And I will get, after Amanda is done, I will go into the broad numbers, but just so you understand the general impact of the arts or recreation in our economy, the arts contributes as much to the GDP, in fact, slightly more to the GDP. If GDP is your favorite way to look at the economy, it is not mine, but it contributes more than agriculture and transportation combined. So that's not exactly the case in Vermont, but across the country, that's the case. And so the essential nature of connecting recreation and the arts to agriculture and town governments and downtown businesses and our main streets is absolutely ever present. And we have to start to understand the true economic structure under which we live and figure out how to rebuild it so that we have the strongest economy we possibly can. And I'll tell you more about how I did that here in this community and how I think we should do it next after Amanda gets to go and share her expertise. Go ahead, Amanda.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brenda. Yes, so as I mentioned, I recently joined the Wellbeing Economy Alliance as their Knowledge and Policy Director right before this COVID crisis began. And this organization represents an association of governments, activists, academics, and NGOs that are committed to fundamentally changing our economic system so that it's in service of people and planet rather than the other way around. I think to me, what's been so incredible about this moment is how clearly we are presented a trade-off between people and the economy. So right now in the US, obviously we're hearing Trump speak that the hardest decision of his life is going to be whether to restart the economy or save people's lives. And to me, it's very clear that this trade-off is absurd because we are the economy. Yeah, the economy is not something abstract that happens to us. It's driven by each of us. So the economy is the way we provide for one another. Really, that's it, of the way we provide for one another. So the economy is a means and not an end. So if the economy is failing, the economy is failing because we don't have enough to eat, if we can't get enough access to medical care, if we can't afford housing, or if we can't find meaningful work, all of these senses, the US economy is indeed failing. But I feel that these failings are coming from a misunderstanding of economic priorities. So we shouldn't be focusing right now on ensuring stock market values or returning to GDP growth rates. We need to be on focus on ensuring that everybody is being provided what they need most, particularly during these times. So this is the time to listen to people and to really listen to what they need, particularly through these kind of events like town meetings, because this is a very strange moment. It's unlike any other that we've had before, and we shouldn't be rash to propose solutions that are meant for another time. So this is why I was very excited to be invited to come to this town meeting and to hear from Vermonters about their experience. So obviously Vermont's my home and I have incredible pride being born and raised there, but I'm right now in Scotland, so I'm not currently in Vermont. So I would really love to take this moment to not only provide some humble reflections and ideas on how I think we can build a more inclusive and locally driven economy, but I'd also like to take this opportunity to ask you how you're doing, what you need, what you feel you've learned from this situation regarding the economy, what you feel you may have taken for granted before now, because I think all of these answers will ultimately determine our economic recovery, as it's up to us to build back together. So, in as much as I'm happy to answer questions, I'd also love to hear from all of you.
Amanda, I would love, if people have questions, you can start typing them. You can ask them in Facebook. We'll make sure to get them to us. But I would love to hear a little bit about the work that you've done with small rural economies around the world and how that might play into the work now, though we do understand. I also want to say, I meant to say this at the beginning, as a caveat, we do not know the total economic outcome of this situation. And so to do anything more than theorize a plan economically out of this would be irresponsible, and because we are going to have to look at the total outcome in the end to really be able to make a strong plan. But we do need to start formulating ideas and thinking about the unique nature of Vermont's economy. And one thing that's really great in the conversations we've had, Amanda, is your work with rural economies and what they have done that's, I think, really unique and different than what we have done here in Vermont or across this country to help drive their very unique economies. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about that while we're waiting for some questions to come in.
Sure, absolutely. So my philosophy towards economic policy design is, first of all, probably very much inspired by town meetings in Vermont and growing up in those sort of environments, is participatory economic policy design, which is also goal-oriented. So to me, it's very, very critical that the proposed solutions and instruments and ideas are coming from the people and the communities in which they are meant to be applied, because that's the way in which you find the solutions that are in line with people's values, objectives, and the realities of the situation. In terms of goal-oriented, what I mean by this is that, amazingly, too often economic policy is designed with the idea that we're supporting the economy for the economy's sake, rather than being really clear on what we want the economy to be delivering. And so just having that step in the first place of really considering, one, what you value, right? Like, what are the values that you really hold as a community, and really articulating those, if it's honesty or fairness or ambition, or, there's a lot of different values, to be clear on those, and to also be clear on really what you value. So those are sort of your economic policy objectives. So being clear if it's, food security or housing security or equitable distributions of wealth or clean water, being clear on really what those main objectives are, and then considering how you develop strategies and policies in which to achieve them. So, and by policies, I think economic policy is just the way that we encourage particular kinds of behaviors and activities that we think are going to help us achieve our objectives, right? So this is why it's important to understand the values that are important in a community, because they're different in different communities and cultures. And so you might want to motivate and encourage certain kinds of values in some places relative to others. So in Asia, for example, they have a very collectivist, many times, cultural values, whereas in the US it can be more individualistic, right? And so they're not the same placement, they won't have the same sort of language, but the point is to be clear on what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to go about achieving it. The other thing that's important to me, I think, that I noticed particularly in working with rural communities, is that too often the economic policies are designed from a perspective of deficit. That we don't have enough skills or investment or finance in order to grow or in order to progress, as opposed to starting with a consideration of what we do have, of our strengths and our skills and our resources as the starting point for the kinds of activities that you end up wanting to promote and develop. And I think that that's really significant also as a way of building really diverse and unique and culturally grounded economic systems. I don't know if that answers it.
Yes. So we do have a question. It's from Curtis Reed, and Curtis, we allow people to be entered in to the panel to ask questions live if they like. Would you like that, or would you rather you can just tell me yes, or would you rather we just ask your question and you just watch? That's totally up to you. So let us know. And while we are waiting for that, I will say that from Carrie Barber, who is our producer, she's asking, or it's from the web viewers. That's what it's coming from. Is it possible to build an alternative party centered around economically literate policies? So that I'm going to say, just for myself, that I am a Democrat, and that I'm not saying it is impossible. Other countries and cultures do have that. And what I think is really, though, the most important is that we center building our economy around policy and not around party. That's really been important to me as a person who is marginalized. It's very frustrating to me when the discussion becomes very party-centered and it is not centered around what we need to do that is best for the people. And I think we really need to decide as people, because we have that choice. We are not all elected officials. As people, we have the choice to, and even as elected officials, to decide that we are going to center our policy around people, and we are going to, we're not going to center around party, but people. And I think that's exceptionally important. So I'm going to let Amanda take it from there. So sorry.
Well, I think you did a really great job covering that, Brenda, honestly. For myself, I'm not much of a party person. I think it'd be great if we had more parties in the US. I think that would that'd be wonderful. But I wanted to just speak maybe to Curtis's question here. I know you asked if he wanted to be but he said, is not recovery a misnomer? What you are talking about is restructuring. I think, that's a really good point. I think, as Teddy also said earlier, we're not trying to, or we shouldn't be trying to just get back to what was before. I don't think it's going to be possible anyways, but that shouldn't be the ambition in this situation. There is going to be an incredible amount of trauma and pain and work that is going to come out of this scenario, but it's also it's a pause, a pause for reflection, and a pause for really reevaluating what parts of the economy we really see as essential. Because that has been sort of presented, I think, more than anything else, that even though the hedge fund managers and, the sports players and these types of people get paid the highest salary, push comes to shove, it's the caregivers and the nurses and the delivery drivers and the grocery clerks that are really the heroes of our economy, right? That really provide us with the things that we need the most. And I think in thinking about that, and then therefore thinking about how we can structure our economies in ways that reflect those values and the needs of certain activities and sectors will be really significant. But whether I like the term "Build Back Better," this is an idea of how it can go, but I think there's probably a lot of different terms that resonate with people at this moment in time as they look for aspirational visions.
I would like to just let people know that if you are watching live from a group or another page, we don't necessarily see all the comments that come unless you're on our Facebook page, Brenda Siegel for Vermont. So if you go to Brenda Siegel for Vermont, then we'll be able to easily get you on if you for questions, and if you sign in and come on as a participant, we'll be able to easily get you on for questions. And I want to just build on that and say that I think that we are really seeing some deep holes in our economy as we have been through this crisis. We are seeing that the very people we call essential are the very people we don't think deserve $15 an hour minimum wage, or for that matter, a livable wage. And those are the people that are literally keeping us alive because they're keeping us fed, or they're LPNs, or they're janitors in hospitals, or whatever work that they are doing. They're literally keeping us alive without the equipment that they often need for protection for themselves. They are getting sick and risking their lives. And we have for years and years told them that they don't matter, that they are not qualified enough to have an amount of money in their pockets that allows them to survive. That it is on them to work several jobs to pay their bills. And then at the same time, we tell those same people who are often single parents like myself, that we tell them that why aren't you spending enough time with your children? How are your children going to end up? And so the very pressure that we put on them is being shown in this particular crisis with such a strong light on it. And I think that we have to be really cognizant. And while we're talking about that, let's just talk about the privilege of social distancing that many of us, even those of us who are struggling, especially in Vermont, there's a lot of people, but there also are a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness and are not able to distance themselves the same way. People in prisons, which you'll see a press release come out from myself and other people running for office today about the prison system in Vermont, who are not able to socially distance themselves, even if they are at risk, at medically high risk. And so I think that what we're seeing is, how do we build better? Because we haven't built strong enough, and then Black and brown people across the country are dying in much higher numbers than the white folks. And I think that that's really important for us to own and understand, because what that shows is not anything more than our very broken system that we have created throughout our history. And where we have actually created systemic inequity, and systemic inequity is people caused, and it can be people fixed. And so this is not things that are beyond our control. It has been within our control all along. It looks like Teddy has something he'd like to jump in and say.
Yeah, that triggered a couple thoughts in my mind. The first one being that what we're seeing is that we've been told for decades that the things that we want to do, raise the minimum wage, expand healthcare, so on and so on and so on. It's not that we didn't want people to make more money. It's not that we didn't want people to have healthcare. It's not that we didn't want people to make more money. It's that we couldn't afford it. We couldn't do it for whatever reason. And now we are pumping $1 trillion bills out of the legislature that directly send $1,200 to every American citizen. We're seeing hazard pay, talks of $21,000 a year for some of these people that are already getting underpaid. So I think the first thing that this has shown us when it comes to economics is that it is almost never a logistical problem. It's a matter of political will putting these policies in place, and we're seeing that now. And the second thing that I want to talk about, that I don't remember when I thought of this when you were talking about it, is the closest thing that we have as far as a historical precedent for this would be the flu epidemic of 1918. You were talking about that's what it was, the privilege of social distancing. In 1918, people who lived in tenements in New York and Chicago could not social distance. The people who lived in tenements were not the managers, were not the factory owners. The people who lived in tenements were the laborers and the children and mothers and Black and brown communities and queer communities and poor women. And so after we had the flu epidemic, and of course there were many other things that affected this as well, but we had stronger labor regulations afterwards. We had stronger housing regulations afterwards. We had stronger sanitary practices after the flu epidemic. So we have seen throughout history where a major tragedy has led to structural change and has led to big permanent changes. So I think what we need to be careful of is talking about fixes just to get, like we were talking about earlier, we can't just fix the problem that we have now, go back to last year and be like, great, everything's fine. Because similarly to how as much as we all need to get rid of we all need to focus on getting Donald Trump out of office, we also need to acknowledge the things that led to Donald Trump. And likewise, while we need to get out of this the recession that we're going into, we also need to recognize the things that led to this economic recession, which was your point earlier, Brenda, that when you have an economy that crumbles once people get sick, that economy is clearly not working. So what are we going to do moving forward to right-size that economy? What permanent changes are we going to put in place to ensure that in another 100 years, this doesn't happen again?
And I want to just say that one of the things that Amanda and I have talked about is whether or not you were looking at tools or outcomes. So when we talk about livable wage, when we talk about paid family and medical leave, these are tools. And I'm not saying we shouldn't fight for them. We absolutely should, and I will fight for them endlessly. However, and I have for the last many years, however, what we really need to look at is what is the outcome we're looking for. And then you build the structure of the economy, you rebuild, you build better, as Amanda says, based on what you want the outcome to be. Just like you would, I went to Hampshire College. In my college, we had a Division III plan, which is basically like a master's thesis. And what was the outcome we were doing? And then you make the plan. So it is really backwards that we don't talk about the economy that way, that we're constantly, backpedaling. I feel like I get the image of a hamster wheel, trying to figure out how we're going to make this economy work, instead of saying, what is the outcome we want and how do we get there? So I'm going to ask Amanda to talk about that a little bit. Again, please keep asking questions. We don't have Amanda for the whole 2 hours, so please ask your questions now if you have them and you're watching. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Let me apologize. I'm a little bit under the weather, very much hoping that it's not COVID, but I'll need to jump off in like 20 minutes or so. But yeah, to me, I think the point that Brenda's making is so huge. And I think this is the moment, right? Like, this is an incredible moment for us in Vermont, us around the world, right? To really take a second and think about what are the things that we value most that the economy can provide for us. And so much of this also is a recognition that the economy is a variety of things, and some of it is monetized and some of it is not, right? There's a lot of care work that is provided to us without an exchange of money, which is vital to the economy, right? Same way that nature is really the foundation of any economy, and it gives to us very, very gracefully as well, and we need to think about our interaction with that. But in terms of, thinking through the objectives that we have, right? So I think for a lot of people, for example, meaningful work is really important, right? Our work is a lot more than just having incomes. It's also a way that we connect with people in our communities, the way we find our purpose, our meaning, things like this, right? And for other, and I know in Vermont we have a lot of importance placed on clean water, and having a system that ensures that we have clean water, lakes and rivers and things like this. Really thinking through the things and the dimensions of our life that we value the most and we think are the most important, and then thinking through the kinds of strategies by which you can achieve those. Because Brenda's right. Like I see this a lot working with economic policymakers, that we tend to want to fixate on one policy instrument, right? Whether or not that be, investment promotion into our communities or universal basic income, which I'm a huge proponent of, right? But we try to pretend like one of these instruments is going to solve all of our problems, right? And achieve all of the things. And the reality is that you normally need a whole package, right, of different kind of instruments that sit together, that can work together to achieve our goals. And I also think it's important to recognize that not every place is going to have the same goals, right? So we still have this incredible infrastructure within Vermont of the town meetings, right? So like, how can we also revitalize those as a way of becoming clear on what the community objectives are, of what the ideas are in terms of how we can encourage and protect the parts of the economy that are most vital to us? Because this is really concerning right now, honestly, that we already in the US had huge amounts of consolidation of industries. And because we're not protecting small businesses in the way that they really need to be relative to big businesses, when we're making sure that big businesses are okay, that we're at a risk that this is only going to lead to further consolidations of wealth and power within our economy, and less diversification and less innovation and things like this. So this is a time, I think, I mean, it's a concern, obviously, because of our leadership, but we have a lot of incredible leaders that are not just in the White House, right? And to make our voices heard and to be clear on what we want and to start putting forth the solutions we also see within our communities and the one things that we want to hold on to after and as we come out of this crisis as well, because I think those can be the building blocks, these community actions, these place-based initiatives. Yeah, I think we could build a totally different economic system out of this if we all get engaged at this moment in time.
You know, and that really brings us to this next question, which is from Sam, who's watching on the web. He says, what advice can you offer those feeling overwhelmed right now? We want to help, and there are so many in need, different efforts at different various levels of government, all working, educating our kids. How can we be meaningful difference and stay on top of things too? So we'll talk a little bit about that in the second hour, but I think as far as Amanda is concerned with this issue, I think what she just said actually is huge. One thing that I'm seeing, that we're seeing, is that we're so overwhelmed, including myself. I mean, I am now responsible for my son's senioritis and getting him through the last minutes of high school, and it's overwhelming. I say this on every event, but I have endless dishes. They never end. I think I'm hoping like somebody gives me Mary Poppins skills. But what I want to say is that we have to focus on these issues because we could have a second wave. We likely will. And when we do, we want to have a better structure in mind. So I'm going to turn it over to Amanda about, in terms of the economy, thinking about the economy, staying on top of things. And Teddy and I will talk to you a little bit more about what you can do hands-on, it's not actually hands-on, work throughout this state in the second hour. But right now I want to just focus on the economic piece, where the focus could be right now while people are going through this crisis.
Absolutely. So Sam, first of all, I think be kind to yourself. Yeah, be compassionate to yourself and other people. I think we're all feeling pretty overwhelmed right now. I think there's also a little bit of solution fatigue. Yeah, like a real inundation with a lot of ideas and a lot of stress and crisis and just tapping into the collective pain that people are in right now with the uncertainty and sort of the lived experience. So I think it's okay if you don't have all the solutions right now. I also feel really honestly that I'm in this position and I feel like I'm supposed to have these answers about systems change and all of the next steps that should be taken, you know, like around the world and with this Wellbeing Economy Alliance. And I think I've also had to give myself a little bit of space with this as well, you know? So I think it's important in terms of thinking about the economic solutions. If you can do anything is to, instead of trying to focus on old thinking and old solutions, right? If you can, as much as possible, try to reflect right now on the stuff that you really realized you maybe took for granted regarding the economy, right? Like the things that you're really, really appreciating and valuing right now. And when I say the economy, it's sort of the stuff that you're being provided, right? Is it the internet? Is it food access? You know, it's spaces for social connections, access to nature, you know, like clean water, whatever it sort of is. Because I think that the more that we have clarity on that, the more that we'll be able to build a critical sort of power mass to really advocate for those things clearly. As opposed to coming back and being like, because there's going to be so many people advocating for old types of economic thinking who are going to say the only way that we're going to be able to rebuild Vermont is if we bring in all of these huge developers. Yeah, the only way that we're going to be able to create jobs is if you know, like we allow for a total austerity measures, reduction in taxation and rights and things like this. You know, we will be inundated with a lot of different kinds of solutions, but I think if we can be clear on what we really want and to fight for that, you know, for months and years to come, I think we'll win.
So we have another question right before we do, though. I would like to we're going to put our donation link up for my campaign for Brenda Siegel for Lieutenant Governor. And we're doing that because we have stopped doing call time. I don't know if you guys know what call time is, but call time is designed to call Vermonters and ask them for money, generally most people generally lean towards folks with more money, which also keeps us from talking, and not always Vermonters, and that often keeps us from talking to Vermonters, which I think is part of our system that doesn't work. But also, I think another problem with it is that I absolutely feel that it's unethical to be making phone calls to people who are struggling right now, have lost their jobs, are this overwhelmed, and asking them to donate. And however, I still have to pay my staff, and we still have to continue on fighting these issues. And so if you are in a position to help, please do donate. The link is right here, and in our chat, and we will also put it in the comments on all of our different, all the places that it's streaming. Jacob will do that as well. Jacob is our field director, by the way, when I mention him. We're very excited to be here doing this work, and wish we could do it, just endlessly. Actually, this is the issue-based work is the work that I'm excited to do. The questions and answers and bringing regular Vermonters into the conversation, just as Amanda is saying, is exactly how I think we build the strongest Vermont that we possibly can. So I have, there is a follow-up from Sam, and there's also a question from Curtis. So I'm going to go with the follow-up from Sam first, just so that we're on that same thread. He said, are you supportive of federal jobs guarantee, or as an employer of last resort, as a buffer stock of employed people, as an economic stabilizer?
Sure. Yeah, Sam, great questions. I'm really enjoying all of these. So yeah, I think especially coming out of the crisis, it will be really important for there to be some sort of federal jobs guarantee. I think there'll be a need for a lot of public works initiatives. I think that the orientation of those public works initiatives needs to be clearly identified, again, around what our objectives are, right? So if you're gonna put people into, I don't know, like infrastructure development projects, or maybe it's biodiversity conservation, or is it, like a clean, like water initiatives or things like this, like so that they're really aligned with what we feel like are really important. I think there's a lot of really creative ways to also come up with a federal sort of jobs guarantee. I think already, even before the federal jobs guarantee, I hope that we will also have something like a universal basic income. Yeah, because I think that jobs are really important, especially when they're meaningful jobs. But I think that especially when you're talking about rural, small economies, people's spending power is really, really important for jumpstarting those economies. So it's something that is the mix of having enough savings so people aren't in severe debt, so that the jobs and those payments just immediately go towards those big banks or towards those, creditors. So we need a little bit of a mix of these two things, I think, right now, if we're going to be serious about getting back. But again, the purpose of the jobs guarantee, I think, and the kinds of jobs that we're going to be promoting is, should be aligned with the values that we've identified.
Amanda, from Curtis Reed, and can you please give some examples of how you have integrated racial justice into your work around economic justice? I know that has actually been, because you've done so much world organizing with world governments, I know that's been huge, and so I'm grateful that you asked that question, Curtis.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think as Brenda said, I've worked in a lot of different countries, so with very different kind of cultural and racial contexts. So a lot of times the challenge is sort of along ethnic lines, or religious lines, or gender lines. So, the predominant inequalities and the problems in which are presented there, I think comes from a consideration of who you're trying to really have as the beneficiary of policies. And if those are not the people who are directly targeting, you need to be very, very clear about why that is. So for example, right? So if you're trying to reduce rural, like inequality reduction, right? Between rural and urban centers, you might have an initiative where you're trying to relocate some types of activities from urban areas into rural centers. But if you're not having the rural communities engaged throughout that process, right? Or if you're not having, racial minorities engaged throughout this process of really thinking through the logic of the intervention and the strategy, I don't think that you can really call the strategy a very good success, because the likelihood of it being aligned with the context and the priorities of the place will not be there, right? So, I mean, it's always a challenge in policy making, right? Because there is that sort of tyranny of the majority, yeah? So you can have the majority of the population very behind a certain kind of initiative. But I think the point is that you always need to make sure that there's space for it to not just be token kind of inserts by populations, but really, really meaningful considerations of how this might impact their own livelihoods, dignity, prosperity, destinies, things like this. And in my experience, when you bring together these different kind of stakeholders and I think it's important to have a sort of common space to really speak through the strategies and the ideas that are being presented, you can come to a pretty incredible consensus that's felt, right? Like, I think it's hard to be a total dick if you're standing in front of somebody and trying to argue against their rights, yeah? So I think there's something to be said for person-to-person also accountability in this space.
And Curtis has a follow-up question. He says, when I hear about beneficiary, I think of paternalistic systems. And also, she said, he asked what your experience is relative to racial justice in the U.S. Do you have any experience that?
Well, I think, let me first of all say, I guess, because I deal with public policy, right? Like, so economic policy. And although I very much facilitate processes of participatory policy design, it is sort of government issued policies, right? So sometimes I think that those you can view that as paternalistic, but I think you can also view it as just the collective sort of agreement on the kinds of regulations or incentives or disincentives or collective sort of ownership campaigns that you want to have within a community or a state. Yeah. Maybe the term beneficiary doesn't resonate. I think in policy context, it mostly just means who you want to be benefiting from different initiatives, and that in that context, a lot of times the reason why it's important to consider that is because, especially in situations of inequality reduction, yeah, you want to make sure that you're supporting the people who have historically lost out the most, right? So the people who should benefit most from a new initiative are the people who have been suffering the most from the previous ones, if that makes sense, right? So when we're talking about policy changes and structural transformations, it's important to be sensitive to, the needs of different sort of demographics. And I guess, there's something about that that's kind of paternalistic, but I'm not like a total anarchist, I guess, in this sense, and I see a role for government in an economic policymaking. Yeah.
And then your experience relative to racial justice in the U.S. I mean, also being in our state as with a minority background, I think also is part of that. But in terms of your work as well.
Sure. I mean, I guess, Vermont's an interesting place to be raised, as particularly as a woman of color. I think that there's a lot of certain kinds of questions regarding identity that you get asked that you might not get otherwise, right? Like a lot of questions of where you're from. Yeah, no, really, where are you from? Yeah, these kind of things that might influence my sort of understanding of racial justice within that kind of context. I don't know. It's hard to say, because to be honest with you, I'm not a racial justice expert. Yeah, like I think that inequalities related to identity are very important to consider within economic policy design. But I think that there's probably people who can speak with much more authority on how they themselves are the drivers, for example, of economic inequality, whereas I might be better positioned to say how economic inequality is an important driver of racial disparities. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. I think it's, for me, a lot of things, because of the way that I've viewed the world, come back to looking at the economic system as very much a structuring device for a lot of our realities, whether or not that's fair or not.
Yeah, I would say that because everybody has different expertise and works in different parts of our system, first of all, I think that that's a perfectly fair explanation. And I think that it's really important that we have people who are looking at the different viewpoints, right? So in terms of, I think you've done a lot of work around the world and have done some serious thinking about this aspect. And certainly you and I have talked about the racial justice aspect of how we rebuild the economy or how we reimagine the economy in Vermont. And in the term of beneficiary, who's benefiting from the rebuild. It's interesting, Curtis, that you should say that, because I don't actually hear a paternalistic. It doesn't resonate as paternalistic when I hear it, and it's probably just different how we work with that word differently, or what part of our work we do. But what I hear is the question, who is this benefiting, more than anything else. And so I think that it's also really, but part of what we learn is that there are people who are driving economic justice. There are people that are driving racial justice. There are people that are driving economic justice for marginalized folks, specifically around racial inequities. And then there are people who are economists, and they're kind of looking at the picture and saying, how do we reimagine or build better an economy that takes into account all these pieces? And I think the way that we build that strongest economy is to ensure that all of those people who do all of that work are at the table, and not just who do that work, but who have experienced those systems and can speak to the experience of being on the other side of it, are at the table when we are reimagining or rebuilding or building better an economy. And I think that that's really, really important. So I don't know if you're seeing Curtis's comment now. He's listening to you through the lens of 18 years as expatriate and policy advisor throughout Africa. So he's thinking of that. But the question was in the US, and so I think some of that work in other countries is probably different than the work because my understanding of your work is that most of it has been done with rural and governments in other countries. So the work in the United States has been less, although I'm thinking about Vermont has been a big part of your work when you've been here, and certainly we've done that together. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all before. We don't want to make
a comment than a question, I think. But yeah, I'll probably need to go kind of soon. My apologies again. I'm feeling a bit fatigued and want to make sure, again, I'm not getting sick with COVID or anything. But I just wanted to thank you for having me, Brenda, and to see you, Teddy and Judy, for signing this for us. I really appreciate all the questions. I'm around, so if you ever have additional questions following this stream or anything like that, you can please feel free to reach out to me. I don't know if my email or anything is sort of in the link but it's amanda@wellbeingeconomyalliance.org. Yeah, so you can shoot me an email or anything like that. And yes, I look forward to hearing later how the rest of these conversations go and everything like that. And I wish you all the best with your race, Brenda. Yeah.
Thanks.
Everybody stay safe and healthy, please.
Thank you, Amanda. And we will put your email in the chat, and also the Wellbeing Alliance website, so you can learn a little bit more about the work that Amanda's doing. And we will will take it from here. But thank you so much for coming on, even though you were sick. And frankly, I miss you, and I'm really glad to see your face right now. So thanks for being on for that reason as well. And I hope we get to be in person and see each other again soon.
Excellent. Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Amanda. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
So I'm going to allow us to do a little more work in terms of Sam's question, and certainly people can ask other questions as well. So Sam's question was, what do I do? I'm overwhelmed. How do I help people? What can I do here? And my answer remains, which is it would be, please do think about issues and start to talk about those issues, because we are going to experience some gaslighting around all of these issues: racial inequity, economy, all of that coming back in. As Amanda was saying, some of the we must have big corporations, we must have this, whatever, all these structures that didn't work in the first place are going to be the we musts in order to bring the GDP back up. But understanding that that's the wrong measure, because we're not really measuring where we need to be the most stable when this happens again. Because even if COVID-19 doesn't have a second wave, there are other crises waiting in the wings. And so before I get in a little bit more into my work in the dance festival and beyond, and in policy, I want to just answer that question a little more thoroughly and talk about that. I also want to let you know, I don't know where you are, Sam. I don't know where you are watching, but there are mutual aid groups across the country. And so the way that we do our mutual aid, so if you're in Vermont, you can absolutely sign up, is that when somebody has a need, we connect them to a volunteer who can help them, and we allow, and we connect them to one volunteer. So this is not an overwhelming task usually. That one volunteer, as long as they don't get sick, we have a bunch of safety protocols. That one volunteer can definitely work with that person with following our safety protocols for groceries, for picking up prescriptions, if they need help with other things, if you happen to be someone who's economically resourced and they need help maybe with a laundry card or things like that. So it allows a personal connection between two people rather than us calling you every day and telling you there's another need, can you help us again? And of course, when the need outweighs the volunteers we may have to have people have one or two people, but people have found that to be a really productive way to work on this, because it allows them to feel good having done something, but really take care of their families. The other thing I want to say about that, though, is that if all you can do right now is take care of your family, homeschool, and work, or just work, or you're struggling in that way, that's okay. You can find ways to plug in from home, maybe doing wellness checks. We do wellness checks with people. If you want to do that, check in with us. Even if you're not in our state, we're happy to have you do wellness checks in our state to people, because we are trying to get to quite a lot of Vermonters and see how they're doing. You can do all that, but if what you need to do is take care of your family and all of this is just too much, you staying home and doing that work from home and taking care of your children, or if you have children, or whatever else you need to do, that is an act of love, and you are already doing something to take care of people. And so don't feel like you aren't doing enough, and join us on the fight on issues. Absolutely join, help down ballot candidates to make change across the country and across the state of Vermont, because we need you, and we are definitely under volunteered, not just us, but all campaigns, because all people are overwhelmed. So if you have 15 minutes a day to help a candidate, that is actually a huge thing that you can do right now. There is other work that you can do, of course. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in this state, but I'm going to let Teddy take that question as well. I muted too soon. Before you take it, I am going to just say that thanks, Curtis, for coming on, and you can watch the rest of the panel. We will have it recorded, and you'll be able to watch it on Facebook and YouTube anytime. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for your great questions. And Teddy, you can take it from here.
Yeah, no, I would agree completely with everything that you just said and all that advice you gave to Sam. It's, we're all in this together. The entire world is in this together, and we're all stepping up and helping each other out in whatever way we can, whether that is just taking care of your family, whether that is leading up or volunteering for a mutual aid group, or whether that is just, holding public officials accountable during this time, because this is the time when public officials really need to be buckling down and doing the work to help their constituents. So I guess my advice would be do what you can. And that sounds like a really cliche answer, but if every one of us just does, many hands make light work. So if all of us just do a little bit to help our neighbors, to help our communities, then we're all going to be better off in the long run. And I mean, like Brenda said, there are some folks who, who are just single people with no children, or their children are out of school, they're retired, whatever it is, that might have some extra time on their hands to run up a mutual aid group and coordinate all those efforts. There might be, I've been doing a grocery shop once a week for some older folks in my community, and that's what I've been doing. So everyone steps up in their own way. So do what you can do to help your community, but don't feel like every government in the entire world has failed at solving COVID. So no one of us, don't make it feel like, I have to be the hero and, save my community, and you don't have to. We're not asking for a miracle. Just do what you can do. Take care of yourself mentally and emotionally during this time, because this is an extremely hard time for folks dealing with mental health issues, or folks who are don't have the best living situations at home. So just taking care of yourself, taking care of your loved ones, calling your grandparents extra, things like that are. It's the little things that are going to be the most important throughout all of this craziness, rather than one large dramatic thing.
One thing so back to the economy, one thing that I often say that I think people will hear differently now is that it's very expensive for us not to solve our problems. And we are now seeing that in droves. It turns out that we can find a place to allow people to live who are experiencing homelessness. It turns out that we can talk about paying our essential workers more. It turns out that all the things we have been told over and over again we can't do, we can do. So I think that when we're looking at coming out of this crisis, we absolutely must find a better way to talk about that. What we need to do is we need to look at that end goal, right? So let's talk about the dance festival a little bit. As I said, my son and I lost all of our belongings in Tropical Storm Irene. In that crisis, the community did step up. I've never talked about it more than I'm talking about it right now. They came into our house. They helped us clean out all of our belongings in the tragic experience of throwing out 28 cubic yards of belongings. It was quite tragic and very, very, very hard for us emotionally. And I lost so much work during that time because I was a subcontractor, and I've never really recovered economically from that experience because the work that I had then was very much more stable than the work that I had following that. And it was a huge economic crisis for Brattleboro's downtown community. Like I said, I was living in Williamsville at the time, but it was a huge economic crisis for Brattleboro's downtown. We really, really had already been hurt because the Brooks House Hotel had a huge fire earlier that year. And so we had lost a bunch of businesses and homes during that time. I think that what I saw was that FEMA gave us some money to survive, not a lot, but some, that there were individuals and organizations who were willing to help us. I never fully recovered. It took me years to have a couch in my house. and I only have one now because someone gave it to me who was getting rid of one. And same with tables. I only have tables because, I inherited one. So I think that that's really important to remember, but and this is not that same kind of crisis. People are living in houses aren't going to lose their furniture, but they might lose their house because they can't afford, like Teddy was saying. And our downtowns are, the problems that our businesses are going to face are very, very real. And the only solution to them is that people have money in their pockets to spend in those stores, but and that's like the immediate economic solution, right? The immediate infusion of cash. It's not that we just give business owners money to survive in the form of loans, because those loans are not going to carry people if people cannot rebuild with them, right? So we have to start seeing the people that are the base of our economy as the economic, as our economic base as well. So when I was looking at the dance festival, what I understood was that the arts is huge in our economy. As I stated in the beginning, arts alone across the country, if we're looking at GDP, again, I'm going to make the caveat that GDP is not what we want to look at, I don't believe. But if we're looking at GDP, arts contributes more to the economy than transportation and agriculture combined nationally. Vermont absolutely has an agriculture piece that is huge and is a huge part of our economy and recreation. But when we're looking at that, we also want to understand what kind of money comes into a community, right? So when we're talking economy, what kind of money comes into the community when there's an event? So this is a structure of arts events, but you could change from an arts event to, let's say, a recreation event like the ski jump in Brattleboro, or like Bread and Puppet, when Bread and Puppet has happened, or like Brewfests around. Those kind of, you can look at those events as well. So when a tourist, someone from out of state, comes into Vermont, into Windham County, it's done by county, into Windham County, and they spend on average $44, not on the event, not to the organizer or the venue, but into the community, into restaurants, hotels, stores, right? So let's use that example in the Latches. And I was going to do some math before I started, but I'm going to do it right here. So if you have in the Latches, there are, I'm going to just remember this amount of seats. I haven't been thinking about it this year because I am not. So there is 750 seats in the Latches, and let's say it's all filled with tourists, which is never the case. There's always local people, but we're just going to use that example. So 750 people come in, and they spend an average of $44 in our community. The infusion of cash into our downtown community from that one single event, from that one single evening, is $33,000. So no, that is not going to be all tourists. So I often say, okay, when I'm doing this math, because I do it a lot, I often say, okay, let's say there is 750 seats filled and half is tourists, which even that, I would say that usually it's a little more than that is the tourist population for our events when we have them. So if we have that, then we have 325, only $11. So $11 per, it's a lot lower in our community. It depends. In New Hampshire, just across the border in Keene, New Hampshire, it's a lot more from the local community. And that has to do with what our average income in Vermont is $35,000. So it has to do with what people can spend. So that gets back to that whole building a base, right? So 325, so we're getting $3,575 from our local community. And then we're getting $14,000 from outside of our community. So at that point, we have $17,875-ish. I just did that math very quickly, so if it's off by $5 or so, let me know. I didn't actually do it with a calculator. So, And so what I think is really important to understand is that so for the dance festival, and this is true with many festivals and events, that's a single event in the dance festival, right? So 3,000 to 5,000 people total come, but each one of those people counts again when they go to the Latches again. So if they go to a show of ours at the Latches on Thursday and Friday night and then come to another event of ours, that they're counting 3 times in that community, in that event, right? So let's say it's a low year and it's 3,000 people, or a very low year and it happens to be just 2,000 people, right? So, and that's throughout the 4 days they're coming, right? And each one of those people sometimes is counting 3 or 4 times into what they're infusing into our local economies and our stores and our restaurants. So again, you can flip that with Brewfest. You can flip that with recreational events. You can flip that with what happens on Church Street sometimes in events, even with protests and rallies. And we can start to talk about how we encourage our store owners and our businesses to start to push out events, no matter what they are, because part of rebuilding, but also it only works. So this is something that just happens. It can happen even better if you structure the event around or within the goal of driving the economy. So that was our goal. You absolutely don't have to. Art for art's sake matter. Recreation for recreation's sake matters. But when I thought about how we're going to, the best way to actually rebuild out of this crisis or reimagine out of this crisis is to go into each of these rural communities and get the input from those communities about how we work with what does exist, how we create structures that really focus on the economy and utilize this tool to get to our goal. But we do have to decide, what is our goal? Is our goal going back to normal, which I think is impossible? Is our goal to have a stronger structure beneath us? And if that's our goal, then we have to structure the tools, and that's what the Dance Festival is doing right now. We're reimagining how we operate. We have to structure the tools to meet our goal. We can't do it the other way around, because not everything will be fixed with single outcomes. And this is just, of course, one piece, and it's the piece where I have the expertise, because I have been working in building the economy after a crisis. So that has been my job for the last 7 or 8 years. I'm excited to bring it into lieutenant governor seat. And I want to also, of course, talk a little bit about those tools that weren't there in the first place. But I am going to let Teddy take that up a little bit right now. And I want to talk about how Teddy and I met. For those of you that don't know, he was my campaign manager in my governor's race, and I'm really grateful for that. But we met doing economic justice work and fighting for those tools that I'm talking about right now. And so when Teddy is thinking, and now he's a city councilor in Barrie. So when Teddy is thinking about how do you rebuild Barrie, which is a little less rural than my area, but what do we do when we need to build that structure in order to actually meet a different goal, and what should that goal be? Understanding again, the caveat again, that we do not know the economic outcome of this crisis, and we cannot responsibly say definitively what should be done until we know that outcome.
So one thing that I have talked about a lot in the city council with constituents, whatever, is that Barrie's unique for a lot of reasons. One of them is our generational divide. Anecdotally, admittedly I haven't looked at the census data, but anecdotally, most people in Barrie are either under the age of 40 or above the age of 55 to 60. And so there is, when you're trying to have conversations like this one, when you're talking about what is an economic tool, what are our economic goals, I often have to, I share my view that I don't think we can just depend on retail business, as we've thought about it historically, to be the backbone of our economy. Anyone who knows Barrie knows that our downtown, our main street, our restaurants, are the backbone of our local economy. Yes, we house some state agencies in some of our office buildings and things like that, but our small businesses and our small locally owned restaurants are the backbone of our economy. And those are the folks right now who are suffering the most. And, we have great folks like the folks who own the quarry down on Main Street that have stayed open, that are doing delivery, curbside takeout, and because they're one of the few places that is still pretty much fully open, they're getting a lot of business and they're being really supported, which is wonderful. But you have a whole bunch of other restaurants in town that I love that are not able, for whatever reason, or have chosen not to for public safety reasons, have just chosen not to operate anymore. And yes, you have the Small Business Administration putting out loans, but those loans, as we've seen, they're hard to access. They're not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination. So I often talk about the need to look at downtown Barrie in a different way, talk about our rich history of revolutionary politics, and which I know people like Barrie, revolutionary politics. Yes. Revolutionary politics, talking about our strong labor background, talking about the fact that we have places to swim, hike, bike, ATV, all within a couple miles of downtown. Doing what you did with the dance festival, Brenda, is that same idea. It's talking about, yes, we want small, locally owned downtown businesses, but just having them there isn't enough. You need a community to support them. So what we do in Barrie is we have an event called Barrie Heritage Festival, which is very similar to the dance festival in that it's a multi-day event that has events geographically spread out throughout town, so that no matter where your business is, you are getting some of those tourists or some of those locals who don't always go out and spend money downtown. They will because of Heritage Festival. So the goal of Heritage Festival was, yes, to bring economic activity to downtown, but it was also to celebrate the heritage of Barrie that I was just talking about, that labor heritage, that socialist political heritage that is so rich throughout our city. And so the goal has to be, if the goal is supporting our local businesses, the tool cannot just be more business. You have to do something else in your community to engage that business. And so the goal with Heritage Fest is both to support our businesses, but also to spread the word about all of the great things that we have going on, have had going on for over a century here in Barrie. So when you talk about measuring successes beyond the GDP, for example, recently we were talking about how Barrie has it has a higher tax burden, but we also spend less per pupil than most communities around the state. So that's a measure that we can look at beyond just GDP, is per pupil spending, things like that. And of course that doesn't work nationally, but there are a whole bunch of nuances there that you have to go through. So yeah, I think Brenda's absolutely right in that. And it was a point Amanda made too about the gaslighting. Like, we have to make sure the big corporations are okay. We have to make sure X, Y, and Z. The thing that we have to really make sure about is that people are being fed, people can afford to live, and that our small locally owned businesses that aren't owned and operated by a board of directors in Arkansas, but are owned and operated by our neighbors and their families, making sure that those businesses can thrive once we get back from this, and making sure that there's a structure in place so that once we are in this post-COVID world, that those folks who have been going without a source of revenue for months at that point will have a way to get propped back up. Because if we don't have a backup plan for that, and then we reopen the economy and half of Main Street is closed for business because they had to go out of business because of what happened to them, that's just going to compound the problem that we're already seeing. And so I think that it's absolutely right that we can't just, this bailout, the way we restructure, cannot be the same thing that we did in 2008. Because my generation, your generation, Brenda, have lived through what, 2 or 3 once in a generation economic collapses now. So in the past 40 years. So it's obvious that we are on shaky ground and we need to restructure that. So I would say that a good goal for us would be not to go back to the way things were, but would be to correct some of the mistakes that have been made over the past 40 years. And what can we do so that when we do reopen this economy, those mistakes aren't repeated.
And I think it's really important for us to, thank you for that. And I think it's really important for us to also understand that this includes the racial inequities, right? It really does. I mean, in this state, we are in the top 5 for racial disparities in our prison system. And we have not taken the proper precautions to protect people in corrections. And that means that we are participating deeply right now in the racial injustice that is happening in our state. And I think that that's exceptionally important to talk about, and not just talk about, but to solve this problem. I also want to talk about, so one of the things that we often talk about, Teddy and I both, are that you have to have money in your that people have to have money in their pockets for our Main Street to survive. In order for businesses to thrive, people have to be able to survive. That has been a statement that I have said over and over and over again throughout the last 5 years, that's really exceptionally important. And we understand progressive change a little bit differently because of both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren bringing forward some of those issues. Definitely Bernie Sanders in 2016 brought it to the absolute forefront. And as many of you know, I interned with him in my 20s. So this was just about 20 years ago in DC. And I was really learning and hearing about that inequity in a different way then. And I had not grown up in economic crisis, but my son has grown up struggling economically because my economic situation changed. And that's how, how that wealth gap has grown, right? There are people growing up in upper middle class families who cannot financially survive, and so they are moving away. Instead of doing better than the previous generation, they, meaning me, my family, is moving away from the economic status with which we started. So it is, not only is it impossible to get out of poverty if you're in poverty, near impossible, but except we hear stories and then we're like, so-and-so got out of poverty, but that's a one-off. It's not a norm. And not only is that impossible, but people are losing their wealth. People are either losing their wealth in real time, they are middle class right now and they're losing wealth, or they've been losing wealth over the transfer of generation in their family. And so what we're seeing right now is not only are people that have been losing their wealth, is that just dropping off? That's just dropping off, but also that that new people are now going to end this in a different economic situation, and people that never thought they'd be there. Because I always say we're all one crisis away from poverty or from some sort of disaster. And that could be a health crisis, that could be a weather crisis, that could be a once in a lifetime pandemic across the world.
And Brenda, not to cut you off there, but it's the same point that you just made. You know, there are so many people across this country that are one car accident, one health crisis, 1 or 2 missed paychecks away from poverty. Likewise, our nationwide economy was not equipped for a disaster. Likewise, when the entire country is faced with a health crisis, the stock market can't cover the bills. It doesn't work. It just does not work when you have, it's to tie it back to the early 1900s again, you have a very small amount of the population literally just sitting on wealth. And so you have folks like your family who have throughout the generations lost wealth that they had accumulated. And you have folks, various members of my family that had to double mortgage their home to cover medical bills, and for the audience, full disclosure, I was an Elizabeth Warren staffer during this last presidential race, and she used to say all the time that middle and lower classes she proposed a wealth tax, which was basically to get the folks who are sitting on all this capital to redistribute that wealth throughout different parts of our economy. And she had this brilliant line where she talked about middle and lower income folks. They've been paying a wealth tax for decades. The government just calls it a property tax, because the wealth that so many of us had and that was sold post-World War II was buy your home, buy your land, and that's your wealth. Well, when the housing market crashes and when the stock market crashes and when there is an economic disaster, just like folks who are living paycheck to paycheck, that wealth also doesn't make up the difference. So you have, not only is it harder for people to accumulate wealth, it is the folks who have already been privileged and successful enough to accumulate that wealth are starting to lose it, while the folks who, to begin with, already had more wealth and more capital that they could ever actually need, just continue to grow and grow. And that's something that Elizabeth talked about. That's something that Bernie's been talking about for decades. And I think that the more we go through, we have seen in the past 50 years an acceleration of the boom and bust cycle. And the more disasters we have following your rule of most folks are one or two disasters away, that's going to increase the amount of people who are then dependent on the federal government for different types of financial bailouts. And so it's this whole, cauldron of economic problems all interacting at once that speaks to the deeply ingrained systemic inequities and just basic unfairness of the structure of our economy.
Yeah, and I think that I think we have to talk about, when we're talking about where we go from here, how do we build a bottom-up economy from crisis and beyond, we have to acknowledge, and I think I have to tell you that I do not watch TV very often. I think Teddy knows that. And we have a TV and rarely turn it on in our house. I do read a lot of articles, but I have watched CNN the last several nights because I'm actually awestruck, because I turn it on and I feel like I'm listening to some kind of progressive radio. I hear them, suddenly I'm hearing about systemic inequities that have always been there. Suddenly they know that they've always been there. And suddenly I'm hearing about how people need to make a livable wage and how Medicare for all is going to be the issue of a century, and about how we need to have paid family and medical leave, and about how European cultures are going to come out of this better than we are because we do not have the structure in place to come out of this economic system. It's almost as if people have been saying that for years and no one has listened, because as that issue has grown, the reason that we saw the rise of Bernie Sanders in 2016 was because, and for that matter, Donald Trump, because he said things that he was lying about, but some people believed him. I absolutely did not. The reason that we had the rise of Bernie Sanders was because people are angry, and they should be, because their lives aren't working. They were promised something. So in my generation, which I am a cusp of millennial and Gen X, for those of you that follow generation ideas, I actually think that they're a little silly, because everybody has their own experience, and it's usually more your age than your generation. But anyways, my generation has really been in a place where we went to college, told that we could come out of college and we would be, that everything would be fine, we'd be able to get a job, it'll all be good. And it was actually during the time frame that we were in college that shifted, right? It was starting to shift before it, but it wasn't a well-known fact. And it was during that time frame that reality shifted. Oh, no, now you need a master's degree. Oh, no, now you need a PhD. And for me, that wasn't really a possibility. By the time I was 1 year out of college, I was having a baby, and I was going to be a single mom. And although I didn't necessarily fully know that but I was pretty sure. getting a master's degree was going to be a real hard thing for me. Not that people don't do it, people absolutely do, but it was not a real possibility for me because economically I was struggling, because there were major crisis issues happening in our lives. My brother had recently died, so I was multiple crises away from being able to really do anything to change that. In fact, not to go too far on the tangent, but I do think it's important to understand this. In fact, at one point, when my son was about 8 years old, I applied and got into law school, and I could not find the childcare that I needed. And I was going to have to take out $200,000 in loans to apply to attend night school, and I wouldn't have seen him anymore. But I would have gone. But the most important thing was that I couldn't find childcare. So what happened is I didn't go, and I got a bunch of dance work. I was a teacher in schools and after school programs and inside schools, and I got a bunch of work. I really needed the work. And so getting out of that economic situation was near impossible for me. So now let's fast forward to this moment, right? This moment in time, amplify my experience by so many millions of people in this world, in this country, so many thousands and thousands of people across this state. People have now experienced a crisis. Getting out of the situation they're in right now will feel near impossible. We will have to create a people's economy. We will have to create an earth-centered people's economy to ensure that we can get people out of this crisis. And I am going to let Teddy talk about that a little bit more right now.
So when Brenda talks about a people's economy, it's understanding the fact that we got this perfect example. We got the stimulus package from the federal government, right? Most people are getting $1,200. Excuse me, people under $75,000 worth of income will be getting $1,200. Children $500. Married couples $2,400. So on, so on. Couple things though. First of all, if you didn't file your income tax returns in 2018 or 2019, which people do for a variety of reasons, and there is an income level at which, if you're below said income level, you actually don't have to file a tax return, which I did not know. Those people who did not file 18 and 19, fiscal year 18-19 tax returns have to wait for their stimulus, currently estimated at months. So the lowest income people who are the most at risk will not be getting their stimulus until after folks like myself, who, because I worked for a presidential campaign with a very ethical candidate who made sure we were paid for the full month after we got generous severance, etc. I'm getting my stimulus before someone of a lower income without that security. And so that is one way that this, I'm just going to use the term bailout, has been structured in a way that does not prioritize people first. The second thing is there's a lot of talk about the, I think like 380 billion, something like that, of total available funds for our small businesses. There is an additional $450 billion available for the largest corporations in the country. So the largest corporations are getting bailed out to the tune of $100 billion, yes, $100 billion more than Main Street Brattleboro, than Main Street Barrie. So when Brenda talks about something like a people's economy, that entire conversation has been backwards. We should be worrying about getting money directly into the pockets of low income, moderate income people and locally owned small businesses, and working our way up to the wealthy and to large corporations. But right now what we're doing is we're starting with the wealthy taxes and the corporate funds, and working down to small businesses and working down to low and moderate income families. Tying it into racial justice and gender justice when talking about a people's economy. If you are not a documented immigrant in the United States, you're not getting any stimulus. If you are an 18-year-old woman of color who is supporting your mother through both of you working, but your mother still claims you as a dependent on her taxes, you're getting less of a stimulus. So that's less money going into those communities. So until we start prioritizing. Oh, please do.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say that I think actually, and I'm still working on this, but it looks like actually if you are an 18 and if you are even 17 and being claimed as a dependent, but also filed a tax return, that your parent neither gets the $500 for you, nor do you get the $1,200 for yourself. So I'm still looking at that, but that's what the New York Times article recently said. So somehow they, for some reason, I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they just screwed up the language, but I don't think that's what happened. I think it was intentional. So in fact, it seems quite possible, and I will update you all, but it seems quite possible that my family, who is struggling financially, is only going to get a part of our stimulus. My son did work, filed a tax return. I also claim him as a dependent. And so I will neither get the $500 for him, nor will he get the $1,200 stimulus, is what it appears is the case.
Yeah,
and so
he definitely won't. If you claimed him as a dependent, he definitely won't get the stimulus. I don't know how that affects your income, but that would be interesting to see. But it's exactly right. You have the conversation in Washington is, okay, so let's take this family. There's a single mother. Her kid is 18, going to college. They're both working, so on, so on. How are we going to mess with their money? That was the conversation that happened on Capitol Hill. What's the least amount of money we can give them to make it still work so that this bill is worth it? Instead of Brenda gets $1,200, Ajna gets $1,200, and Walmart can figure out their tax returns later or their refunds later. Amazon who paid $0 in federal taxes, can figure their stuff out later. And that's how I personally, and I think you, Brenda, would agree, that's how we need to be approaching these conversations if we are ever going to have an American economy that works for the people. Because there is also something to be said, and this is a fight that I get, not a fight, but this is a conversation I have a lot within progressive groups, is there is something to be said for American individualism. There is this prevailing mantra throughout our country for the last 200 plus years of lifting yourself up by your bootstraps, taking care of yourself and taking care of your family through your own means. And there is definitely something to be said for self-responsibility. There is definitely something to be said for the value of hard work. But it comes to a point where you need the federal government of the United States, in order for that philosophy to work and hold any cadence, has to establish some reasonable floor for the American people, so that even if you aren't someone who wants to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, start a business downtown, be a pillar of the community, you don't want to do any of that, fine. You still need to be able to work, afford food, afford your house, and be able to take care of your family. That needs to be the floor, not what is the least amount of money by which this person can get by. And those are two very different conversations.
And I think I want to add to that let's talk a little bit about how we value work, right? So what are we valuing as work, right? There's volunteer work all across this country that isn't paid, maybe should be, but is not paid. In fact, our government is asking for it right now, our state government. And I think there's an inequity problem there, actually. I do think that we need to put the money into paying doctors and nurses who are volunteering their time. I think that we have to do that. I love that Vermonters stand up for each other, but I wish we did not have to. And I don't think our government should be asking. I could understand a mutual aid setup where they're trying to connect volunteers to individuals, but in terms of going into nurse and doctor situations, that's a lot to ask, and often the people that step up to those are not resourced people. And we lose good organizers, we lose good doctors, good nurses, good LPNs, good all of those things, because that is not a sustainable structure for society. But also, I think that when we're talking about arts, we went over what that brings into the economy, right? Oftentimes what people say to artists or arts administrators, as I have been both, is people may think you could have made different choices. Sure, But then who would teach your children how to dance? Who would teach your children theater and art? What movies would you have to go to? All those people started somewhere. When we go to live concerts, how would we be supported then? Maybe we instead need to have the conversation. How are we valuing the work that not only fills us as humans, our souls, fills us as humans culturally, but also how are we valuing the work that is essential to our economy, from volunteering to the arts to, I can think of recreation, actually. I can think of a million things that we do and we don't value as work. But in fact, people are working very, very, very hard in those ways, and they aren't surviving. And we are surviving right now, again, not just because of essential workers, which is huge, but also because we can click on and watch a live concert. And that person isn't necessarily making money. Some people ask for donations. I've tried to give a few dollars when I can when I'm seeing that. We can click on and watch somebody who does a dance, some kind of choreography. We can click on and see an art class for our kids that's free. And I think that we are, and the same thing is true with recreation, right? We have people who are skiers, who are snowboarders, who lead outdoor expedition groups, who are barely surviving. And meanwhile, those are the things that, and for that matter, migrant farm workers. Let's not forget migrant farm workers. So we are surviving literally because of the same people that we would look at them and say, and this has happened to me, so I know it happens, but also I've seen it happen to other people, look at them and say, why didn't you make a different choice? You would be in a better position if you made a different choice. Sure, but then I would have abandoned a bunch of children who were and students who were depending on me for another way to survive. And I just did not think that that was ethically correct. And not only that, but the positive impact on the community has been huge economically and culturally. And that's not just true for me, that's true for people all across our state and country. Teddy has something to add to that.
Yes, because I know Brenda knows this, but for folks watching at home, before I got into politics, I was a theater major in college. So I totally understand your being told that what you're passionate about, what your work is not as important or essential or as valued as other aspects, doctor, mechanic, so on. But we also have to remember now, it's so funny that it's just not funny, but it's interesting how much, how this pandemic has opened our eyes to so many things. Imagine social distancing and quarantining at home without books, without film, without music, without something to watch on television, without, especially more recently, video games to play. Video games are a very intensive art form that takes a lot of design and storytelling and so on. So when you're talking about valuing work, most of the folks who are essential employees right now, a lot of them have been working around minimum wage. A lot of these artists and authors and performers that we are now depending on to help keep us sane as we're stuck in our houses for months, have been doing their work for, how many times have you been told to choreograph something for the exposure? Exposure doesn't pay the bills, but we find out now during a pandemic that we need artists just as much as we need food service providers and doctors, because we are, again, it sounds so cliche, but we're all in it together. And when Brenda talks about this a lot, when there's one section of our population, one section of our economy, what have you, that is suffering, that is not surviving, never mind thriving, there are other parts of the economy and other parts of our society that suffer. Because Brenda's not doing the dance festival this year, there will be less revenue in local downtown businesses, which will directly impact people's tax rates. Property taxes, school taxes, and so on. So understanding that when we talk about the value of work, it has to go beyond just GDP, beyond just economic growth. We have to are our people okay? You go to the Industrial Revolution in London, a lot of people had plenty of money, but not many people were happy, and not many people were living lives that they would wish their children to live. And so we have to understand that how we value people goes beyond the economics of it. And there's also a very real social implication for the different economic policies that we choose to follow.
So I want to say about that, actually, that another thing that has come up, I think, multiple times during this crisis has been that volunteer work that we undervalue. Now, all of a sudden, we're so grateful. I'm so grateful for the person. You know, I ran out of food stamps this morning, so I will out myself. Full disclosure, everyone already knows, but I use EBT and SNAP benefits, and I ran out this morning, and I felt a sense of panic when I still had to pay an extra $20 for groceries. That was fine, but I'm more worried about the rest of the month, right? And not only that, but I had lost my only work as a result of this crisis, and which was teaching social justice and civic engagement classes. In fact, in this case, it was leadership courses and a political discourse class. We were going to have political debate and discussion. So I don't have that little bit of income coming in. And then in addition to that, we have a economic structure that creates a shame base, right? So when you go and go to the food shelf, I'm so grateful, and I talk about it publicly, even though, as Teddy will note, it's very hard for me to talk about my economic situation publicly, actually. It's a really hard piece for me. But I'm grateful that they're delivering right now, because I am not going into places. I'm my child's only parent, and a little risk is too much risk. And so I'm grateful that they are delivering a box of food, and I'm grateful that I can turn to that as I am running out of resources this month for food. And I think that something that we really have to think about a little bit more is that this is not something that just happens right now. This is the most panicked I've ever felt about food, but I have skipped meals before so that Ajna could eat. And so while I'm more panicked right now because I don't see that there's an easy way out, I want us to remember that people are in these positions every single day. So if you're a family who's experiencing this for the first time, and you will have a way out when it's over, because whatever your job is something you can go back to, and you're going to be okay, please try to remember, bring with you this moment of fear, because there are people all across our country that experience this all the time, and it is the economic structure that crumbled that left us here. And so I was reading this morning about the happiest country in the world. Those articles come up all the time, right? But this was a CNN article, and I don't know why CNN has come up so many times today, but it was an article, and they were talking about what is it like to be in the happiest country in the world during this crisis. Absolutely, there's still fear. There's still mutual aid efforts going on, but the people are sure that coming out of the crisis, they will have the support that they need, not to go back to normal, but to build better, as Amanda was saying earlier in this event. So they are not feeling the fear for the future that we are feeling here in this country, because they understand their government to be willing to fight harder to build better and learn from the crisis. They trust their government, which we cannot, that we struggle with that, because for those of us on the margins, and frankly, those of us in upper middle class and middle class families, the government has let us down. And the way to change that is not only to elect new leaders, but for people who are at every level, from school board on up, but for people on the ground to fight for that change. So I would say that that's part of building better and building a bottom-up economy from crisis, is for all of us to rise up with the remembering, with the knowledge, whether we're going to get out of this personally or not, to build a better economy. So I am gonna just have us each give just a little closing statement about where we're at right now. Please do talk about the tools that we need and how you can imagine us rebuilding without, of course, all the information. And I'll do the same. And anything you'd like to leave the audience with. And I want to, before we do that, I'm just gonna say that Sam offered a GDP alternative. Dr. Phil Lawn from Australia, I do know about this alternative, suggests a genuine progressive indicator, GPI, that takes resource availability and sustainability into consideration for more accurate measure. It also measures from the lower half more, and so lower 90% actually, and so that's something that I do know that, and I think we should take that into consideration. So I'm going to turn the floor to Teddy for a closing argument, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the main thing to take away from this whole conversation is that we need to restructure our economy and restructure our government so that it is working for the vast majority of Americans, for the vast majority of people in the United States. And I think that the way we are going to do that is not necessarily by, as someone who studies history a lot, it pains me to say, I don't think we're necessarily going to find those answers by combing through history and looking for how they rebounded from World War I and from the pandemic. I think that we are going to need to start looking at our economy and our society in very, very different ways than we have, certainly since Franklin Roosevelt to now. We're going to need to redefine what it means to be essential. We're going to have to redefine what it means to pay a living wage. We're going to have to redefine, as Brenda was, I think, aptly talking about earlier, how we define progress, define growth, and define economic health in the country, because our GDP has been pretty good over the past couple of years, but obviously where we are now, that shows us that GDP is not everything. And so I think that we need to do things like institute a continuously growing minimum wage. I don't think you can pass one bill with one number for 1 year and then you're good. I think we need universal health care. I think we need to stop penalizing people for getting an education. Brenda was talking about when she was in college, the transition happened from you need a bachelor's to a master's, from a master's to a PhD, and so on. In the years between Brenda and I, my generation stopped being able to afford to go to college in the first place unless there were very generous scholarships or you went to a community college, which community colleges are very valuable resources, and wonderful people work at them and wonderful people attend them. But when you're trying to get into the upper middle class, getting a job on just a community college degree, on just an associate's, would be the right way to say it, is not that easy. And that's not a reflection. I personally don't believe that that's a reflection of community colleges. I believe it's a reflection of the rest of society saying we're requiring more and more and more from you while giving you less and less resources to achieve that. And so I think that is my main takeaway. There was one other question you wanted me to answer, Brenda, and I don't remember what it was.
It was just so we've talked a little bit, but if we were imagining where we go from here, where is that?
So where we go from here is, I think that we need to, as a former, I supported Bernie in 2016, I worked for Elizabeth Warren. We need to get Trump out of the White House. The Democratic nominee was not my first nor second choice, but we need to get Trump out of the White House. Once that's accomplished, we need to focus on the Senate, we need to focus on the U.S. House of Representatives, and we need to focus on our city councils and our state houses, because that's where the most immediate change can be affected, is your local municipal government and your state governments. I do think that, like I said earlier, we can't look to history for all the answers here. We have to come up with some of them ourselves and institute them moving forward. And I do hope that if there's any good to come out of this pandemic, if there's anything that can be gained from the folks who are sacrificing their lives without PPE, who have been laid off and now no longer have health coverage, if we really want to say that we're hurt over the loss of those people, if we really want to honor the memories of those who have already passed, those who will continue to pass, and the folks who are going to be economically and emotionally devastated by all of the repercussions of this, if we're going to be a country that actually looks out for each other and that actually is one community, we need some very large structural changes. So that next time there's a pandemic, because there will be a next time, there will always be a next time with viruses and with sicknesses because they evolve. There will always be a next time. So we need competent leadership so that rather than where we are now, actions could have been taken in January and February that would have resulted in less lives lost and less economic and social devastation. We need competent leadership, which is an extremely low bar, but we also need to institute big structural changes. We need a living wage. We need universal health care. We need to stop, we need to incentivize education rather than decentivize education. We need to make sure that the United States lives up to the promises it has made its people over the past couple decades, and it has not. So if there's any good to come out of this, it's that we can work together. This has shown us that we are still united in spirit when a crisis hits. We need to keep that unity and we need to keep that same passion once we're out of this, so that even though there will be another pandemic and there will be another sickness that comes around, we need to make sure our systems can handle it so that we don't have unnecessary deaths, so that we don't have unnecessary economic loss, and so that we don't have all of these things that are now necessary that would not have been necessary. I mean, think how much different people's lives would be right now if we had paid family leave. Think how much different people's lives would be if Social Security benefits were enough to get by. Think of how different people's lives would be if they didn't have to worry about paying their rent or paying a huge student loan bill. I mean, yes, people are dying and we need doctors and we need nurses to take care of them, but there are also so many other implications that we aren't going to see for a long time. And it is the responsibility of our communities and it's the responsibility of our governments to actually learn from this so that next time around we have systems in place to just handle the fallout as well as we can, because there will be a next time. And we need our systems to be able to absorb that without crumbling and leaving folks in the dust, because that's not who I believe we are as Americans or Vermonters. And so that's my big takeaway, is it's going to happen again, and we just need to be as prepared as possible. And we need to have policies in place that protect people, not protect the economy, because the economy can only be protected from so much.
Yeah, I want to just say that I agree with everything that Teddy said. I think that, I mean, certainly the nominee was not even anywhere close to the top of my list. Not even, it's a tough one for me, for sure. I think that we are going to have to fight like hell for structural and systemic change and building a better structure. We have no hope with our current president, and we have some hope. It's still going to be a real fight, but we have some hope with the nominee. And what I understood after my governor's race was that having the ear of the nominee after you lose is one of the most important things that you can do. Because, and I really want to say that, even though this is a talk about economy, I just want to say that. It was not easy for me. It was, Teddy will tell you, it was a very challenging time in my life to have that conversation in a different way. But having the ear of the nominee, not just that conversation, but to really engage with the nominee that way, so that you can hope and to influence. I was very lucky in who I was talking to, but to hope to influence shifts and change in policy ideas and have whatever your priority issue is. So for me, there was opioids and poverty issues, right? And I had a weekly meeting with that person and with Christine, and we talked about those issues. And she did roll in some of what was important to me into her speeches and her commentary and her platform. And that is part of what happens after these elections, these primaries go through. So let's really talk about the kind of influence we might have now, and then the kind of influence we want to have, hopefully, when we get Donald Trump out of office. Because we are not going to be done fighting then. That is not, trust me, with this nominee, that is not a done deal. We are going to have to fight hard to make those changes. We were going to have to fight anyways, but we are going to have to fight hard. Now, on the economic front, coming out of this crisis, we know that if we had had a livable wage, we would be in a better position right now. We know that there's so much we could have done to make difference. Paid family medical leave, universal health care. I can go on and on with tools. But we are going to have to utilize the resources that already exist in our state, as I said, recreation, arts, and agriculture, and we are going to have to connect that to our governments, our local governments, which means electing leaders in our local governments who are able to imagine a new creative economy, a new bottom up, building better, imagine an economy that benefits the people who are the most marginalized, that has an eye on racial justice and economic justice. We are going to have to work on that, the entire ballot, moving up, and also connecting those resources, figuring out what they are in each of our communities, having elected officials that are willing to go into those communities and really dig deep with the local elected officials and with the local people on the ground and figure out what those are and how we connect them and how we rebuild them. And what I'm really excited about in the lieutenant governor's race is that is my experience. So coming out of a crisis, one of the things that maybe wasn't at the top of my platform before, but is now, is that I will be able to go into our local communities and utilize my career experience, helping people to build and grow and have a new vision of the economy in a way that allows us to not just drive the economy as a spurt of infusion, but to drive the economy as a long-term push, looking at the strategic investments, looking at all that we need to do to make change. And so in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to offer not a plan, because again, we have to be looking at the whole, but I'm going to offer a structure by which I think we should be envisioning an economic outcome and how we figure out what the tools are from there. So I want to thank you all for this conversation. I know Amanda isn't on, but I want to thank Amanda for her expertise in the economy and coming on and really taking that first hour in such a comprehensive way. And I want to thank City Councilor Teddy Waszazak for his work here, and we'll continue to work together. And I want to thank my mom, Judy Kanoe, for interpreting this event and all of our main issue events. And being able to offer that so that everyone in our state can understand what we're talking about. I think that's extremely important and something we should be modeling for in all of our campaigns. So thanks, and thanks to Progressive Insider, who once a week does do, or sometimes more than that, does do our events and helps us to move forward with everything that we're doing. And please donate if you're able, because it does take money to have a campaign and to continue on these issue-based events. Join us next week. Join us for afternoon tea and a homeschool parent support chat on Thursday. And join us next week on Monday from 7 to 9 with candidate Dane Whitman, candidate Keisha, who's running for rep in Bennington, and candidate Keisha Ram, who is running for Chittenden County Senate, and Vanessa Santana, who's a community leader in recovery on healing the overdose crisis and opioid epidemic. And we're going to hear about the national perspective as well as the local perspective and what we can do and how it works in this event. going forward, we do have a climate crisis event, and 3 weeks from now, we have a COVID-19 racial justice roundtable, how COVID-19 is impacting communities of color. And we hope to have some great experts on with us then. Thank you all very much for another excellent issue-based events, and we'll see you next Monday.